Is buffering. Yeah, my bitrate's quite low. Maybe I need to up my bitrate. Okay, so welcome to the Q&A and critique number 27 here in Erindale's Discord server that we do every Thursday. Here we are today with we've got Slink, we have 21st Century and JC, good friends here, and we're about to begin. So we already have a question for today and an agenda. The first question is, how do I break up the edges using Fernell as a basic concept? So here we're going to take a look at this. I've been working on making this head. I'm starting to do some character design with the actual characters. So if I pop out of the camera, I have a character mind map that I'm currently working on, and I'm currently testing proportions and different things, and I've also improved the shader quite a bit. So that's where we're going to begin, and that's what we're going to work on today. So are you guys ready? How are you?
Ready.
Okay, so 21st, with the context to your question, do you think you can expand a bit of why you want to know?
So I was watching your streams, and I've been trying to do the edge breakup thing for a while. I messed with like a couple different ways. Like the first one I tried was like just making a duplicate and then just like making like a tiled thing with all the brush masks, which doesn't really work for animation. And then I tried Compositor last week. Didn't really see too much there that would make sense. And I feel like the closest I got is Grease Pencil. But I feel like if they add material notes to that, it could work. But I think your way seems like the best. I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll just quickly answer you that. Aaron, welcome to the Q&A. So this is a huge honor. He's actually the host of this Discord server, so we are streaming live. So Aaron, welcome. The microphone is open, so if you want to talk or pitch in, you're always more than welcome. It's a huge honor to have you here.
Thank you. Always lovely to jump in.
Okay, so basically 21st Century is asking, how am I breaking up the edges of my material? So let's take a closer look here and open up my shader nodes, and I'll quickly explain it to you. So basically with my head here, I'm using a preprocessor plane, which helps break up the edges a little bit. But see along the edge here, if I go full screen, the edges on here is basically a Fernell. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just break down the Fernell aspect of the shader and improve it, and give you guys some clues on how to do that, yeah? And hello, Jaba. And also Arister, welcome. And Super Secret Goblin, cool. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the material. So this is version 6 of the material. I'll keep my versioning. And let's go to my Fernell aspect. So the Fernell is driving... okay, let's go back to the source. So what I do is I have a coherent distance material. So the coherent distance material is basically, I get two sets of textures. One is one certain scale, and the other has another scale. And so I have two textures, and one has one particular size, the other has another size, and they both are driven by two separate scaled UVs. And these scaled UVs are driven by a stepped logarithm, where you floor the logarithm of the view zeta depth, and then you drive the power. So this is, I explained this a number of different times previously. So, but basically I use the same texture, which is a grayscale brush stroke. And then from there, I use the same texture and I drive it into a multiplied map linear from incoming geometry with a dot product from the same normals that I have set up from the texture. So I'm using a linear light from the texture to drive the brush texture to create normals. And then I mix the two normals together with some Voronoi, so that kind of gives you kind of like this broken edge system. But basically, in other words, I just take the normals and I take a Fresnel with a dot product. You can use a Fresnel node, but I use dot product for performance reasons. And then from there, I absolute it or do a number of different things. Map range is completely useless, but you can see what's happening. And then I use a threshold and using a light path or a shadow ray to kind of break up the edge. So, okay, so this is a lot of talk. Let me show you basically what it does. Can you guys see the screen all right? Okay, can you hear me okay as well? Good. So basically,
Yep.
alright. So let's take a look at the dot product on the head. And let me just get out of the camera so you guys can see it without the actual pre-processing. And we'll take a look at these fares, principally. So as you can see, from I mentioned earlier, I'll go into my distance zoom system. So this is the one that I showed you where I have the brush strokes, which scales based on the camera distance, so that I have a coherent scale between the brush strokes and the distance of the camera. So that I practically say, all right, use the same brush size based on the UV, so I can use UVs to paint the texture. I also have another system with a UV seam where I can hide the seams with another texture, which is also based on distance, but this time it's generated, so it's 3D triplanar, so I can hide the seams whenever I want. That's some extra work for later when I do the UVs. But for now, I just take this. This is my base texture to break up the edge. Then I turn it into a normal map. So the normal map is using a Voronoi, and it's kind of like breaking up the normals of the edge of the object with brush strokes. This kind of gives me this nice brush texture. And then I take that brush texture and I move it and multiply it into each other with the dot product. So here's the dot product to get that Fresnel effect. A broken Fresnel, not like a true Fresnel, but a broken one. So you can see that the zoom is working okay. At low angles, it kind of makes things disappear. That's fine. For the art style, and then I start. I take like a less than approach to kind of like cut the edge out. So I have Filmic turned on right now. I probably should turn it off actually. So here in the Filmic, I'll just let's make it standard, so it's black and white. There we go. So now you can see I'm using a less than to kind of create this mask. White is opaque, black is transparent in this case. And I use the is shadow ray with a mixture to drive a factor of a transparent and the diffuse. So this is basically whatever's black or whatever's white is the second layer, which is my diffuse color, and whatever's black, which is the first layer, is transparent. So all around this edge here with the paint and the normals and the Fresnel, which is a dot product of the incoming normals, practically, or the incoming rays from the camera, sorry, creates this edge. And handy. So let's take a look and see what the diffuse and the transparent looks like. We'll let it sit there and compile for a moment. And then we can move on to how we can use parameters and custom attributes, no, not custom attributes, custom parameters inside your objects to change your object.
Sorry, is this the node previews add-on you have that makes those boxes?
Yes.
Cool.
Super handy. I highly recommend it. It's one of the top add-ons that I use every single day.
I think I have it. I haven't really got into using it too much, but it looks really useful in that setup.
Super, super useful. I can't work without it now, actually. It saves so much time. And in fact, you could unplug it from the end and it will still compile the shaders regardless of your unconnected material. So you could technically work full screen and do whatever you want to do with the math with some previews of what you're doing. without needing to recompile the shader. That's another benefit of using no previews. So I highly recommend it. It's a well worth investment. Right, so back to the normals. As you can see, my edges are still not broken. Why? Maybe that's why I have a problem. Maybe because I changed the material alpha clip. Sorry, that was just recompiling. Hello, hey pancakes. Nice to have you here. Regan. So basically that's what I'm using. I'm using a Fernel with the dot product, with the brush strokes, to create the edges of them, or to create a mask to kind of break up the edges of my object with the Fernel. Where did everything go? Too much threshold. What? Okay, I'm gonna go back to the end. Oh, that's because I changed the alpha clip to 1. Sorry, my computer's running a little bit unresponsive from the stream, and while things compile. So, do you guys have 21st century? Does this answer your question basically of what's happening and how it's working? Of how?
Yeah, it does. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of a noob, so I definitely can't pretend to understand all of that, but definitely give me like, direction to go, and like I appreciate the like explanation of like, the broad overview of where everything's kind of plugging in.
There we go.
Thanks a lot.
So if we take a closer look, well, if we want, we can like recreate it from the ground up to make it nice and easy. If you want, you like that?
Yeah, I would actually, if
Okay.
you have time.
So
Yeah, I want that as well because I'm looking at painting stuff soon.
ooh. So okay, so I'll focus principally on the Fernel edge breakup with the normals. Right? I'll make a new material. Whoops, just delete that one. Make a new material. Start from 0. And I have there selected, so selectable. Delete the material, make a new one. Okay, so here's my sphere. Nice and 3D. Really interesting. If I turn on the lights, it has shadows and everything. If I show the lights, there we go. So there's my system. That's what I'm going to be working on the most. So from there, first things first, we need a Fernel. So when we get a Fernel, we take a look at it. It shows the angle to the camera. The other alternate way that I was showing you earlier with the dot product, where you get the texture. Let's go into the full screen and go into my add nodes and take a look. I'm going to show this panel here so you can see what I'm adding. So I'm going to get my texture coordinates node. No, sorry, geometry node. And in my geometry node, I have this one called incoming. So now I'm going to get a dot product. Vector math, yeah. I think it's vector math. I'm using the other add-on called node tabber. Dot product. With the incoming, if we take a closer look, now I can it kind of controls or takes the normal from the other, basically to get an idea. We can start working something. But I don't have any current normals from the object. So what I need is I need like a normal from something. For example, there we go. Now we have this normal concept happening, but we need the object normals. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a normal map. I'm going to go into my input nodes, normal map, just plug that in. And voila, I take the normals from my normal map, which is based on the tangent space of the object, and I just recreated the Fernell node. This may be a bit more performant than the other. So here's the Fernell as a comparison, black and white. White is the edge based on an IRI, which gives you some control. And then there's the normal map with incoming geometry as a dot product, which gives me the same data. I guess you could say just inverse. Alright, so that's the first thing. We need that. All the Fernell doesn't really matter. And now we need a texture. So let's grab an image texture, and let's grab, for example, the brush strokes that I have here. Here it is. Don't mind the UV seams. I'm going to, just for the thrill of it, I'm going to project it to screen space to keep it nice and simple. So into the camera view, pop. There we go, so now it's screen space. And I'm going to use also another vector mapping node. I'm going to pop that in, and I'm going to use another value node. Here, here's a value node to scale it so that it's not so small. There we go. Good, okay. So we have two things. We've got this group of stuff, or the Fernell node, same thing, and we have the texture node up here. So if we zoom out, what we got to do is we got to like mixture one with the other, kind of like a mask. So can you guys guess what I'm going to do next? Something simple?
Mix RGB?
Yeah, there we go. So mix RGB, one color is going to be, one's going to be a factor, I guess you could say, or a color, doesn't really matter, because this is kind of like a lerp node, I suppose. So we have, I'm going to use linear light, and I'm going to just unfull screen this just to experiment to see. We have this dot product, linear lighting with the other object, and now we have a factor, and cool, okay, that's basically we've got what we need, more or less. So now I can use another map range node here in the full screen. We can go down to, what do we want? Converter, and we want a map range. Now we can control with the map range, for example, the minimum and the maximum of the edge, kind of get that kind of vibe that we want or need to kind of bring out, you know, what part is solid and which part isn't. That can rotate. The super secret goblin says he feels like you could copy paste this part and just stack and rotate the effect. Yeah, that's true, practically. So now you have this as the Fernell, and you can, for example, if we're in our principled shader, we can just go into this. I'm going to be using Eevee for the rendering here because this gives me shader to RGB node. So plug into alpha. So because we're in Eevee, we can like tell us to go to alpha clip, shadow mode as well to alpha clip, and if we compile the shader, now we have a clipped alpha on the edge of this object, and the sunlight is kind of crazy, so let me just change this.
So cool.
So that's basic. That's the basic concept of where is it? I can't select it. Okay, rotate. There we go. Now we have a proper sunlight. So select the, there we go. So now we have an actual sphere with a broken edge stuck onto screen space. The other parts of how you make the brush strokes change and all of that is something else, a lot more complex. But this is the basics of how you break up your edge of the object. The problem with Fernell though, as you can notice with the floor, is that at low angles, the floor will become completely transparent. So that's the issue with Fernell, and also straight on, you will not be able to see anything because the floor is flat. So if you're going to be using Fresnel edge breakup for your painterly, then you're going to have to use a very curvy world modeling practice. So you can't really like stick to straight edges very well unless you have a different system based on the camera edges. So for example, you could use something else that breaks up the edge instead of the Fresnel. Use camera space X, Y, and Z on the edges with a gradient like a vignette, and use a vignette as the edge breakup for flat surfaces. So, you know, you can play around with that. But that's the basics, is you use alpha clip as a mask, your brush strokes, however you project the brush strokes onto the object. In this case, I'm using actual UVs with scaling so that I can direct the brush strokes on my object, and I can zoom out and the brush strokes will scale correctly. For example, the mesh will have a more deeper, richer brush strokes the more I zoom into the object along with the edge. Kind of like it fills in. So that's the first things first. So, cool. I hope that helps you.
It really did. Awesome, man. Thanks a lot for showing that. Because when you said it involved the preprocessor, I'm not gonna lie, I was looking at that like giant node tree you had. I was like, there's no way I'll like ever be able to do that.
Yeah, that preprocess is a different level, I guess.
But yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it. This will be you guys upload this on the YouTube channel, is that right?
Yeah, I just record it and put it to my stream, yeah, to my channel.
Cool.
So here we go. Let's go back. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next topic, which is something I wanted to share with you. So Aaron says it looks ace. He's got one slight optimization, is that you could use the normal from the texture coordinates node instead of a normal map. Yeah, you're right. I probably should have at the beginning. Okay, so have any of you ever worked with custom attributes before? Or custom, sorry, not custom attributes, because that's confusing with geometries. Custom properties. Hello, Amin.
Nope.
And you've mainly been confused. Alright, so I'm just going to give you a quick tiny demonstration of what custom attributes can do for you with materials. So here in the top right underneath the item tab, I have a custom global illumination and shadow amount as a property. So as you can see, I have my shadow being calculated by the actual material, but I can make it something else. So for example, if I want green shadows, I can tell this to be 1 and paint using vertex paints. I'm going to get like a nice green color and I'm going to fill. So I have customized my material without needing to recompile the material to have custom shadow colors. So now I have green shadows on my dude to kind of personalize him a little bit. And I can work him using these parameters. Same with my global illumination. I can like say, for example, I have a lot of global illumination right now from the world shader editor. So I can give it a custom color and also make it, for example, pink. Now I have a very strong global illumination coming from the world shader, and I can tune it to be whatever material I want it to be. In fact, I could probably make it another type of green, just kind of being consistent with what I want. And so this is built inside the shader without a need to create anything. And if I really wanted to, I could also like use my vertex colors here to paint into the material what I need around the actual object, especially with the I can actually like paint in some color bleeding or whatever I need into the actual object, or like some fake translucency or something like that into my material. And if I don't like it, I can turn it off, obviously. So I can turn off the global illumination a little bit and turn off my shadows and go back to normal. So these parameters here, the good thing about it is that if you read it from the material, they do not recompile the shader. It's kind of like you're using material instances from your object to drive your material. How does this work? So basically, I'm going to show you from the ground up how to set it up and work it so that we can, like, for example, go back to our sphere and change the color without needing to recompile it. So let's go back to the main view, select our sphere. Here's the white one. So now what we want is, I want to change, for example, the color. Let's go into our shading node, tabs. I'll jump out of the camera, look out of that, there we go. So now we have our object, and if we look inside the object parameters, we have this custom properties panel, and we also, underneath the mesh objects, we have custom properties. This is why it gets confusing. And then inside the materials, you have custom properties again. So which one do you use? Okay.
No.
None. So basically what you want to use is you want to use the object parameters, because if we go here inside the attribute get node, the get attribute node, we have three options. We've got the instancer, object, and geometry. So geometry is basically get attributes from the geometry nodes tree or the mesh data, I'm not sure, but I couldn't get it to work with mesh data. And the object is the one where it gets with custom properties from the object panel. So if I have this object here and I can tell it to be object, I can choose or create a custom property. So I just created a new property with clicking the add button with prop called prop. So let's just call this property just for fun. Copy paste that. I'll add a minimum maximum 0 to 1. I'll make it overridable if I link the data, sure, why not? And it's a plain data, or I can make it linear data, or whatever. I can tell it to be whatever I want to some degree. So now I just created a property. It is a float, so it'll be this factor node. But if I write down property and I select object factor, it is now driven by the property. So now this is kind of handy because this can help me change values on the object personally without any issues. So if I select these three other spheres and copy the object material, notice that one is white and the other one is black. Now this is the power. So I could add another property, and in this property, if I give it the same name, the material will detect it, and I can customize material overrides with only one material. So now I have one material, and through any type of variation per object. So Aaron is saying he's seen them, but he's been mainly confused. But goddamn, I've always assumed you had to set up drivers to link it. Not really. Didn't realize it's just the attribute node. Amin agrees with that. So this is super handy. The reason being is, like, now I can use any type of custom property in my custom object to drive the same material. The other thing that you want to work with as well is called vertex color. So vertex color, for example, is another good thing, is I can grab a color or a vertex color group, and as you can see, they're painted in. This one has two colors, blue and red. And using the vertex painting, I can paint it, paint a new color into the material if I need to. So here I would have to choose the color, vertex group, and now I can paint whatever color I want into the data, and I can call that data inside the material to have my custom colors without needing to recompile the shader also. So these are the two techniques that I use to save on memory. So for example, this whole painterly concept is built around one or two shaders. One for no shadows, one shader for no shadows, and the other for everything else. And in everything else, I can tune the colors, the properties, the specularity, the custom shadow, the global illumination, and in the future, possibly the concept of the edge break as another property inside my custom properties panel right here in the right. Property, CGI amount, CGI shadow. And I created an add-on to help me create those properties automatically for me using another add-on called Serpents. So instead of like, I just select all my objects that need the properties, hit the button, and it will create them for me. And then my material will read them automatically. Another cute little thing to do, but you'll have to learn Serpents to do it. Or I can give you the add-on for later. Very personalized for my workflow though. So that's a little thing I wanted to teach you. Here it is. If I take a look at the material, I can show you how I'm using it. So here I have the property shadow amount that drives the vertex color of the shadow group. And it is driving the factor from my actual colors. So Aaron asks, does Serpents work alright with Blender 3.x? Yes, I did this in 3.1 just yesterday. So no problem there. I also did in B4 Artist, so it's a lot more nicer. The Python, I think between 3 and 3.1 is pretty much the same. So there we go. So how are we doing for time? Do you guys have some extra questions about attributes and how to make it work? Or would you like me to explain a bit more about how useful it could be or not? Or would you like to take a look at Serpents, or should I move on to character design and the asset browser? What do you guys think? Min says Serpents would be cool. Alright, so I'll give you a quick introduction to Serpents. If not, I can go over these notes later. Basically, I was going to explain to you the quirks of the asset browser and how to do character design from a mind map, but that's a lot more hypothetical. Let's go back to the notes. So I'm going to open up a new scene. I'll just not keep the changes. Go into my folder called study. Yep. Because this was a research project from yesterday. Go to my latest add-on to show you how to make the custom attributes. I'm going to go into my nodes, my nodes view. I'm going to full screen it a bit. Change the editor to visual scripting. Obviously, you need to activate the add-on. You guys know. Here it is. Serpents needs to be activated. And then you're good. Then you go into your nodes layout, and first things first, I need to select the tree. So I have two, and there is a side panel. Let's go to full screen. In the side panel, I have a Serpents tab, and in the Serpents tab, we have a list of graphs. So I have two graphs. One is called the interface graph, super simple, and the other one is called the operator, or the preparation operator graph. So the way Blender works is basically you have operators and you have functions. An operator is what you call from the interface. For example, you hit a button and the button does what? It looks for the operator and the operator runs. So the way an operator runs is it can work a number of functions, or it can just run itself in a sequence. So basically you have these diamond shapes which are white. This is like start the operation, and they chain together. So you can have, as long as your white things is connected, this will chain the order of operations one after the other. So it's kind of a linear execution line, kind of like geometry nodes. And then you have these round and square sockets. So the square sockets is an array or a list of items, and this round socket is kind of like a solid float or a solid piece of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to like hold this open, and I'm going to open up a new blend file to give you kind of like a recreate this add-on to give you these custom groups. But before I do that, do you want me to break down the tree of what's happening basically? Or should we just go straight to the getting your hands dirty and making the add-on straight up? Because it's not complex. What do you guys think? Straight to making, says Aaron. Okay. I'm going to put this onto the other screen. I'm going to load up a new blend. So a good thing to do is to open up Blender using the console. So if you navigate using CD to whatever folder you want. So I'm going to use the latest diff build, and I'm going to use ./B for artist because I'm in Windows. I'm not sure what it's like in Linux. This will open up Blender inside of the console so that if Blender crashes, I can see what the hell happened. And it will tell me everything. There are some extra commands, for example, hyphen, I think it's hyphen debug, and this will give you absolutely everything, including every single click that you do. It will be reported here. So that's a kind of nice tip there. So let me just load up everything. I have way too many add-ons. Give me a moment. Okay, we're in. So let's go back to our nodes editor. Let's switch over to SpreadShop. No, sorry. Oh, this is 3.1. I have not added the add-on. Which version is it? 2.04. So let's install the latest library. Done. Scripting. Opens 2.16 is the latest. Install it. We're good to go. Save the preferences. Go back to my nodes editor, which I don't need to read anything. Go to full screen and switch to visual scripting. And the cool thing with this is that you have an option of creating a tree, and this gives you you have a number of examples already. So you have an operator example, you have a function example, you have events, for example, when your Blender loads up, this should run. You have interface examples, you have a Blender data example to access all the Blender data in your API. You have an example for creating variables and properties. So a variable is kind of like an internal data that you want to store inside your add-on while you work it. So for example, and a property is kind of like an interface user input that your add-on can get or use or store data to the interface. And then you have your interface functions. So I'm going to make a new tree. I'm just going to call this interface. And let me go to my Serpents tab. Where is it? Noodler. Where is it? Tell you what, let me use an older version. This is 3.1. Maybe there is a problem with 3.1, and sure enough, look at all these issues. Yeah, they changed the Python. So I'm going to use an older version built from 3.0. Sorry about that. And let's reload. So what I need to do first is I need to define what is the operator, what does the operator do, and where is the button? What is the button? Where do I press the button? So I have one node tree to create the button, and I have another node tree to create the operator. So once it finishes loading, I can do that. There we go. So let's go to the nodes. go to my visual scripting, make a new tree. I'm going to call this interface. So inside the node of the interface, I can create interface nodes, and in the interface nodes I want to create a panel. So I click on the one that says panel. What's wrong? Oh, new add-on. I'm going to call this showcase add-on author trace. There we go. Hey. Remember? So you have to make the add-on first, and this gives you a number of options called you can choose which tree you want, the buttons to report bugs and delete trees. You also have a tutorial, which is super awesome. The tutorial is basically how you it gives you like a guide of how to do everything. Basically, I highly recommend you do it, and I think this is a really awesome feature from the add-on. I think this feature alone is incredible. So you can like look at the chapters and it will show you how everything works in a rough interface kind of way. So in this case, but you can do that later. But first things first, you create a panel. So once you create a panel, you gotta click on Properties window and choose whatever's in red where you want it. So I'm gonna click here in the sidebar, and I'm going to create a new category called add-on and a panel called my panel. Sure, why not? And that's it. That's the first things first. If I hit compile, it just created a tab with a panel and it has nothing in it. So now what I want is I want to create a button. I click on the button, I connect to the orange interface link, and I'm going to call this execute button. And I'm going to compile, and I see nothing. Why? Just back to reference interface. Oh, because I need a label. Button, panel, header. So here's what I'm going to recreate. So I have this button here, which has the button, and I have an icon, and it's selected into the panel. And from here in the display properties, I change the label, create a label in the header with its own icon as well. Here in the button, here's the label, choose an icon. So Shift A, interface, or search for icon. I can choose whatever icon I want. For example, this little pen. And I plug that in. And here in this button, as you can see, I have nothing. I have no operators. But because I have no operators, the button is not going to show because I can't see what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new node tree here, and I'm going to call this the operator. And inside the operator, I'm going to search for operator. Whoops. Crashed. Maybe it wasn't operator. Oh, it is operator. Okay, so basically I search for this one, operator. I give it a name, and then inside the other tree, the interface tree, I can call the operator from this button. That's basically it. So I have one for the interface. You could do this all in the same tree as well. But you make the button, you create the operator node. In the operator node, you set a name and a description, how it works, if it's a confirmation, a pop-up, or a dialog, or whatever. And then from there, it starts the operation. So here we have this one called invoke or operator. And you have anything for the function as well. So for example, with functions, you have run the function, or events, sorry, on when you load the file, when you save the file, after you do a render, before you do a render, when the frame changes, you can do something, things like that. In this case, it's like when the operator button is hit, it starts to run. Now we have the loop systems for each. For each is in Python is basically for X in something rather context, run the next list of conditionals or scripts or whatever you want until you finish it. So the for each program is kind of like I'm taking all of the selected objects as the collection of things that it's going to run, and every time it repeats it's going to run this tree here. And on each element, the tree is going to run everything on those elements. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the operator when it runs. If I hit the button or look in the console, as you can see, it crashed. From what reason? Access violation. It always crashes. Look for that. If I take a look at the item or edit, sorry, with the add-on that I created, I create a new object like 2 spheres. Away. Where are my 2 spheres? Pump, pump. So I have 2 spheres over here. They have no custom attributes right now. They have no properties. And they have, if I take a look at the vertex groups, they have no vertex colors. So if I click on the button, on which I added in the edit menu, I click on the button and it added all of the 4 color groups that I need, and it added here in the item the custom properties that I need. And here in the text, so if I take a look at the menu here, it says, it gives me this printing, running the operator. So if I click the button, it says it's running the operator on the icosphere. And it has created a property for the icosphere 3 and the other object, and running the operator in icosphere number 4. And it has created the property as well. It also tells me it's printing everything into the console so that I can see what I'm doing. So this print node is really good for kind of like troubleshooting what you're doing. And then from there, what I have is you can get any type of property if you want, and you can set it. So for example, I'm here in the materials and I create a new material and I have this base color. If I right click, I can click Serpent's copy property. So if I click on that and I say set property, when I use a set property, I can paste that property and it says the color node socket, the default value, which could be red, for example. And I could run this into the chain so that I also have to get the material, right? So get material nodes. I have to get material or get element. But basically, the workflow is you get stuff, you modify stuff, and then you set stuff. Basically, like any programming workflow. So you get your blend, the certain blend data. So for example, let's move down a little bit to give you an idea. So here I have this get blend data on the collection, and I can choose get the lattices, the volumes, the font, the curve, the probe, the armature, the pencil, the camera, the mesh, or the object. In this case, I want to get the mesh data, and in the mesh data I get find the data in that particular collection, and what I wanted is I wanted to find the vertex colors. So if there is a vertex color with the name coal, then it gives me the data block exists. This is like it's searching if it exists. And then it gives me an if-else program, which gives me a continue after you run the if-else. If it's true or false, then do something. Here, for example, in the create blend data block, in the create blend data block, for example, I take the same context of the mesh data from the element, and I use this mesh data to create a new data thing. So in this case, I want to use the mesh vertex color layer to do that. So let's see if I can recreate this here nice and quickly. Back to nodes, move this out to, it doesn't crash this time. Make a new node tree and make an example. I'm going to just use an interface function or operator. Click on operator. I'm going to call this example operator by me. Autosave is turned off, that's okay. And where did everything go? There we go. So now I have my interface set up already. And I have an example operator, which is an empty tree right now. And I have my current example operator. But I like to build off the examples. I'm just going to use the first one called operator. Basically, it has the print. This is an operator. And then it prints. You can search in the F3 menu or from the buttons. So if I hit F3 and I search for operator, here it is. That's the operator. It exists. If I click on it and look in the console, it gives me the message. This is an operator. It can be run from the F3 menu or from the buttons. So it worked. So now if I go back to my interface, I have my panel here and I can choose where. So for example, I'm going to click up here and I'm going to add it to the active tool panel, prepend it. I'm going to just have one button for the operator. The other buttons I'm not going to need. So I can remove those. And I have a label, a button, and then I should be able to get ready to compile, I suppose. Let me go back to my Serpents add-on. Oh, I may have crashed it again. Because I'm rushing it. Yeah, yesterday it didn't crash once. Alright. Or is it because I know why. It's because I have this selected, press enter, and there we go. It's all good. Sorry. I can pause the process for some reason. Okay, so go back to my operator. Here's my operator. There is the interface. And now if I compile the interface, the example operator, everything should be fine, I suppose. Where is the compile button? I tell you what, let's make another thing. Could do something. Why? What is wrong? Usually it gives me a compile button unless I have auto compile turned on, maybe. Recursive error, maximum recursion depth exceeded. Trace back, self blender. It can be why? Or maybe because I need an object. Well, here it is. Click on the operator. Here's the pop-up button. Property operator. Okay. So I go back to Serpents. I have the example operator. Append graph. Add a graph. So here on the right, you have the concept of creating properties, and you can create your custom properties here. Variables are internal. You can add your custom icons. You can add assets as well. Define your add-on information to the right here. So in the Serpents panels, that's where you have everything you need to create everything. And then from there, you can save your add-on and use that elsewhere. If I go back to our last project, as you can see, I have two properties. One is the shadow amount and one is the global illumination amount. These are custom properties that I want to add. The difference with using custom properties from the interface is that you have to create them from the interface, but you can use your own API properties from the add-on. The add-on will register. So here I can set the add-on and I can get as well the amount, like, what value. And because I set it, I don't need to check it. It just creates the property inside the actual object. So once you have your add-on set up with your scripts up here, the alley preparation and interface, these are like quick jumps, and also what documents, or I guess you get trees, are added with your add-on. Then you have this compile button or Shift R, and when you do changes, you can hit it and it will reload the add-on inside the interface so you can see the changes. I hit compiled, it successfully compiled perfectly, no problem, no errors, and you're good to go. So let's take a look at the code of the add-on that I created, just to give you an idea of how much work you can save. So this, let's go into full screen, view, area, duplicate into a new window. So this, I just created practically 316 lines of code without needing to write any of it. And it took me, once I learned how to do it, which just took me about an hour or two, I was good to go. And I can customize it to however I want, add my custom code to the add-on, or not even touch the code. But I just saved myself 316 lines of writing code by plugging in some nodes. So that's what Serpens is. Serpens gives you basically the general concept of the Blender API. So just like here, the Blender API concept, if you go back to the visual scripting, and I go back to the tree called preparation, if I take a look at objects, so I could say bpy.data.objects, it would give me a list of the objects in the world. Or I could say data selected objects. I think it's that one. No. Okay, so if I look at the data and hit open, and so you guys can see a bit, it kind of gives me an easier way of selecting all of these things here. So I don't want to use data. I could use bpy context. So in bpy context, I can get selected objects. So selected objects, and it has 1 and 2. I have 2 objects selected, the active one and the not active one. And then in selected objects, I could I can tell it to do something else, you know, like period, and then it says append, clear account, or run a script. So this for each node from the selected objects node makes life so much easier, because you don't need to write this down and understand how this works 100% to do what you want it to do. You have your programming concept in nodes. The only downside that I see from Serpens is that you have no reroute nodes, but you do have portals. So you can get a value. The portals don't do execution portals, but you can do functions. So a function is basically, you can run a function separately inside the operator, and these functions are kind of like portals to another area of the world, which is kind of like you can call this function multiple times, or different areas. They're kind of like groups of areas. So this portal goes to here, and this data tally transports over here, so that I don't need to use these things. So it's basically plug into it, copy, and then it'll paste the actual output wherever you want. So you don't have reroute nodes, but you do have those handy functions, which are kind of like groups. And you have handy like node tree organization up here. You can quickly switch between trees. And you have handy function nodes where you can call an actual script later on throughout the add-on. And there we go. That's a quick introduction to Serpens, and it has now been 1 hour. So let's open up the mic, I suppose, and we'll call this a wrap. And Aaron says, "Oh my God, B4H's our icons are very colorful." Amen says, "Thank you." And so, if you guys have any questions or anything you'd like me to take a look at later for next week, just remember, every Thursday I connect here at the same time, same place. We're open to your art or your questions or curiosity. I usually do a bit of investigation before I begin, and feel free to open up your mic when you want to talk or not, or here in the chat. I pay attention, and we'll let it go. So Erin has one other question. Sorry if you missed it. With Serpents, how do you export to an actual add-on? Well, you click on the add-on panel and you click Save Add-on. And that's it. It saves it as a zip for you. That's it. It's just like save the file, you know, save the add-on. Okay, super easy. So with that, you can save the add-on, throw it onto Gumroad, free or whatever price, however long it took you to make it, or the value that you think it gives. And Bob's your uncle. You don't have to write the add-on code. And then you just, same process. If I create a new scene, and I go to my add-on preferences, I can search for LE preparation. This is the add-on I created, made by me, version 1.2. Here's the Python file and some instructions. It created the add-on for me, so now I could ship this to anybody who needs it eventually. Super easy. I didn't have to learn how to code Python. Amin asks, could you create a panel with a custom node group control? Yes, you can. In the add-on, you have in a new add-on, let me just, for example, I have, oh, there's also an add-on to play music from lo-fi. It's kind of nice. Programming, logic, interface. Yeah, you can add a panel to anywhere, and from that panel you can create any button to do anything. And in that button, for example, you create a function that does something. So in the function, you get the blended data, which uses materials or node groups. And you can also get your material node so it can detect if something already exists, and then set it to do something else. You can also do that with textures, anything else. So for example, with the materials, you can grab your materials. Oops, first I need to make the add-on, and then I hit on blended data, materials, and in the materials I get my get data node, plug it in, whoop, and then I can tell it to choose certain things or select by name. So for example, I get the principled BSDF, and I can tell it to say, all right, grab the strings, the full name of the text, or grab the integers from the passes, the clones, line priority, the floats from the specular roughness, diffuse color. Then I can use the set data. So I can say, all right, in the diffuse color, I want you to set the data to be whatever I want it to be, and see this white socket, that's the execution. So you have a whole bunch of material nodes as well. So Slink, can Serpents load custom geometry or shader or spheroshock animation nodes? Yes, if your add-on is registered. There's also a couple add-ons. So for example, you can check add-on. So for example, it can detect if your add-on exists, right? Add-on info. So for example, this is where you define your add-on info. But you can technically detect which add-on is installed, so it knows, so it won't bug out if you want to like run certain scripts inside those particular node trees. Because once an add-on is installed, it registers its API into the Blender API. So for Serpents would be able to detect that. Pancakes asks, do you need, Erin asked earlier, do you need Serpents installed to use the add-on? The quick answer is no. And you just, because it's an add-on. Amin asks, yeah, I already answered. Pancakes has also asked, I could see this being really interesting to reverse engineer how certain things are done in an add-on, particularly UI and stuff, which I don't know how to deal with. Can you actually look at the generated code? Yes. For example, here in my add-on in the top right, underneath edit if I select an object. Is my add-on installed? Well, basically, once you've installed your add-on, you can right-click, edit source, and you can see the panel inside the code when you need it. No problem. Let me just make sure I can see the panel installed. What? Oh, select. Oh, here it is. It just unregistered itself. So I can right click, edit the source, and here I can see it. I can see the code. Oh, and Slink has asked, can it read custom node trees? That I don't know. Pancakes mentions, nice. Definitely see that, saving me a lot of wandering around Stack Exchange. Yeah, to some degree. The Discord is also extremely helpful of the Serpents community, so I highly recommend hitting them up. So there we go. Thanks everyone for your time. I'm gonna go have some lunch and I'm gonna finish the stream here. So I'll see you guys same time, same place. Feel free to hang out and keep the questions coming. And also don't be afraid to open up your mic. So this is where I stop the stream.